Everyone. Um, I hope your Sabbath is blessed. Okay, so today we're going to continue with the study that I started yesterday, covering the subject of Project 2025. But before we delve back into it, I'll ask that we open with a word of prayer. All right, let's pray. Amen. So happy Sabbath again. We have been talking about Project 2025. And I guess the logic for considering this study is based on the fact that we understand that we're approaching the Sunday law. We're in the agitation of the Sunday law. And in connection with the testing issue, our time is the testing issue that we need to overcome in our time. Has its basis in culture, which is much more universal than religion, or than a given religion. And when you look at culture in a society, you see that the laws and policies that are put forth by a country's government are often a reflection of the culture of the people under that government. It's often a reflection of the perspectives, the mentalities, and the beliefs of the people. Right. And so when we look at the Sunday law as being patriarchy, and we understand its couch, it has its basis in the culture of our societies. And if the government's laws and policies are a reflection of the culture of the society, it follows that as we look forward to a Sunday law, we should be paying attention to the policies and laws that the governments are considering. And we identified Project 2025 as a an effort by the American conservatives to lay out their policy agenda for the next Republican president. And they've been publishing, and when we look at Project 2025, we identified that its basis, it has four pillars they refer to. The first is the document called A Mandate for Leadership. Right. And Mandate for Leadership is what they refer to themselves as their policy Bible. They published one last year. They publish them approximately every 4 years in preparation for the next presidential elections. It's a huge document, over 600 pages. And that's where we've been looking. That's where we've spent our time. In understanding in understanding their worldview, their priorities for the country, and the specific policy proposals that they're presenting. Right. So we're going to come back to the Mandate for Leadership. The second pillar is a personal database that the Heritage Foundation has developed. I should make a note about the Heritage Foundation, because I somehow missed to say it yesterday, which is that the Heritage Foundation was founded by Paul Weyrich. And you might remember that Paul Weyrich is a key figure in the modern conservative movement. When the Republicans lost on the issue of segregation, when the conservatives lost on the issue of segregation, Paul Weyrich was a key figure in helping them to pivot to the issue of abortion. So the Heritage Foundation, they've developed this personnel database. And it's basically a LinkedIn for right-wing ideologues. You know, LinkedIn, you create your profile and you list your professional experience. And it can be a place where, recruiters, companies can look at your profile, see if you fit the bill, and seek to employ you. Which is what this personnel database is. It's an invitation to all conservative ideologues to come in and create their own profile. Basically present their conservative credentials. And this database will serve as a pool from which the next Republican administration would draw personnel. Draw personnel to fill important positions in their next administration. The third pillar is the Presidential Administration Academy. And if the personnel database is like LinkedIn, the Admin Academy is like Coursera. It's an academy offering online education and education delivered through other means. But it's education for the personnel in the database, basically, to make sure that they're all singing from the same song sheet when they come into office. To make sure they're all on the same page. And the fourth pillar is a 180-day playbook. And the idea behind the playbook is that it's been observed that the first 100 days or so are a critical period in the life of a new administration. And as they look back on where the first Trump presidency struggled, they saw that it was in the first 100 days where Trump uh, struggled to pick up momentum. So, in order to address that, they've created a playbook, an outline of everything that must be done over the first 180 days. Right. So we discussed these four pillars. Then we went to the mandate for leadership, where we spent most of our time in the introduction. And that introduction is important because it gives a broad overview of what follows in the next, over 500 pages. It lays out their worldview and their principles and their policy priorities, the main things that they want to see done. The next 600 pages are the details of how they're going to do that. Department by department, bureau by bureau. Right. And in that introduction, a number of priorities were identified. There were four broad goals that they laid out. The first is to restore the family as the centerpiece of American life. This encompasses a lot of their culture war priorities. That they have a specific vision for American society, that it's patriarchal, white dominated, and where down to the family unit, right? That traditional sort of a conservative patriarchal perspective as to what the family is supposed to look like. So this goal to restore that patriarchal vision for the family means addressing what they perceive to be threats to that goal. And of course, that's when feminism, what they call transgender ideology, and diversity, equity, and inclusion come as a focus for them to attack. Right. Their second broad goal is to dismantle the administrative state, and this encompasses their commitment to small government, what they call small government. And it speaks to their thinking about freedom, right? That they believe that that the government has become too bloated, and is overstepping into people's lives, particularly when it comes in to start, you know, pushing equity, equality in on different issues. And their goal is to cut down the government. And this makes for some really frightening reading, what they want to do. They're proposing the complete shutdown of many departments. We'll go through some of that. The shutdown of many offices, I should say. And many functions of given departments. They're proposing basically just a wholesale shutdown. And where a wholesale shutdown cannot be achieved, downsizing, or integrating departments into larger departments, just basically having them absorbed by other departments. Their third goal is to defend the nation's sovereignty, borders, and bounty against global threats. And over here, you read a lot of what they want to do in the area of anti-immigration. And their foreign policy goals, but they target China in particular. All right. The fourth goal is to secure their God-given individual rights to live freely. Um, okay, so I'll speak to that as we go. So yesterday we spoke to the goal of restoring the family. We expanded on that. And their commitment, what they want to do in that area, is to remove diversity, equity, and inclusion, uh, all gender initiatives, and all programs and language pertaining to reproductive rights. Remove it out of every federal rule, out of every agency regulation, out of every government contract, out of every government grant, out of every government regulation, and out of every piece of legislation that exists. Right. And we we need to understand how quite catastrophic that would be. Because when you have a patriarchal status quo, which is structurally oppressive of certain vulnerable groups of people, a critical aspect of addressing those oppressions um, and creating a more equitable society is being able to identify the problems in the first place, being able to frame the problem. And once you frame the problem, then you can develop means by which to address it. And diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives are how the problem is framed, and they're the vehicle through which uh, policies are proposed. Or rather, they're a vehicle through which policies are they develop and create policies to address those inequities. So when you wipe DEI out of every element of government, the point where you cannot even mention it, then you are virtually and you are entrenching the status quo. You're taking away the tools through which the status quo can be addressed and changed. All right. And we spoke about their goal to have pornography banned. But they include what they refer to as transgender ideology in their definition of pornography. And from their vantage point, books that even teach about transgenderism or minority sexualities could be identified as pornography. And they're proposing harsh penalties for those who are caught distributing or educating in this line. Punishments such as imprisonment or being registered as a sex offender. And they also have a major priority around reproductive health for women. But I'll speak to that when we come to discussing the specific policy proposals that they are presenting. I think that about brings us to where we left off yesterday. Okay. I think we spoke about restoring the family. And regarding their goal of dismantling the administrative state, okay, I have a lot of notes and I'm just trying to decide what to leave out. Um, for the sake of time. But I think I've spoken I've spoken already to their goals. I've given an overview of their goals. And I think at this point it might be good to give some thought to, I guess, some of their specific policy recommendations around these four broad goals that they've laid out. Okay, so when it comes to the section of the mandate for leadership that is covering their policy recommendations, it's split into 5 sections. Section 1 is entitled "Taking the Reins of Government." Here you see presented, I guess, their philosophy regarding, I guess, the power of the executive branch. Section 2 is called the Common Defense. This is dealing mostly with foreign policy and immigration. Section 3 is called the General Welfare, which is dealing more with domestic policy. Section 4 is entitled The Economy, which is self-explanatory. And Section 5 is dealing with independent regulatory agencies. So again, this is an over 600-page document. We won't be able to go through everything. It's something that you'd have to go back and look at in your own time. But in our time together, I just want to look at two sections in particular, maybe three. I'll start with the general welfare, which is dealing mostly with domestic policy, and the common defense. And then we'll see if anything can be covered after that. So, okay, so looking at the general welfare. And we're going to look specifically at the Department of Justice. But before coming to the Department of Justice, I'll just make the broad point that the general welfare that this sets out policies for the Department of Agriculture, Education, Energy, the Environmental Protection Agency, Health and Human Services, Housing and Urban Development, the Department of the Interior, the Department of Justice, the Department of Labor, Transportation, and Veterans Affairs. So this is these are the departments that arguably touch most closely on the everyday lives of people. Okay, I said we'd start with Department of Justice. Sorry, it's actually Department of Education. That's first in my notes. So when it comes to the Department of Education, on page 330 to 331, they present a policy pertaining to civil rights data collection. Right, so there's the Office of the OCR, or the Office of Civil Rights, which published proposed revisions to the OCR. They proposed revisions to their protocols regarding civil rights data collection, in which they propose to create and collect data on a new non-binary sex category. In addition to the male and female sex categories that they already collected data on. Right. So, of course, you can reason why that's important. Because understanding what's going on with a group of people helps you develop uh, a concrete data-based understanding of what is going on with them, how they are performing relative to other groups, if they're suffering, right? And so, of course, and you need that data first. You need to know what's going on first to be able to develop to develop and justify policies to help them. And what they're saying with regards to this is that the new administration must quickly move to rescind these changes. Which add a new non-binary sex category to OCR's data collection. And it should go without saying why it would be important for the Department of Education specifically to be collecting this data. Because the data that we do have shows how non-binary people are, I guess, both discriminated against and how they're suffering in the education system. They are proposing to remove the mechanism that points out the issue. Okay. We'll come to the Department of Justice. So the Department of Justice they're all very important departments. But the Department of Justice is particularly important because it's responsible for law enforcement. It oversees the FBI, the DEA, the ATF, and the US Marshals. The Department of Justice is also responsible for representing the US government in Supreme Court and federal cases. It's, it's responsible for civil rights enforcement. Enforcing laws against discrimination, right? It's responsible for prosecuting federal crimes such as terrorism, organized crime, and cybercrime. Is responsible for overseeing immigration courts. It's responsible for national security. Right. So, and there's more. So we see that the Department of Justice, plays it's very critical. So they have a proposal that I picked out that kind of stood out to me. Which is that they are proposing to eliminate the 10-year term for the director of the FBI. Right? Why is that? Why is that significant? Right. For context, the 10-year term limit for the FBI director was instituted to prevent the sort of unchecked power and lack of accountability that was exemplified by J. Edgar Hoover, who was in the office for nearly 5 decades. And the limit was designed to balance the need for independence from political pressure with the need for accountability to ensure that the FBI could function as an independent as an impartial law enforcement body. So the FBI director has a 10-year term. That is independent of the ebbs and flows of political administrations. And so they're proposing not only to eliminate the 10-year term, but to make the FBI director directly accountable to the president. So that the president can basically appoint and fire the FBI director at will. So reading what it says in the document, it says the director of the FBI must remain politically accountable to the president. In the same manner as the head of any other federal department or agency. To ensure prompt political accountability. And to rein in perceived or actual abuses. The next conservative administration should seek a legislative change to align the FBI director's position with those of the other heads of all major departments and agencies. And so this proposal to make the FBI director uh, politically more accountable to the president, of course, it's undermining the FBI's independence. But you can see why they want to do this, because the FBI has been the source of a lot of the lawsuits that have been annoying to them, basically. So there's the I'll say a bit more about that. Okay, so in addition to that, what they also want to do with the FBI, they say they want to streamline the non-law enforcement functions within the FBI. Such as its Office of General Counsel. And speaking of the Office of General Counsel, this is an office within the FBI that maintains a roster of 300 lawyers. And they want to get rid of the Office of General Counsel. Because from their perspective, they say it's been involved in some of the FBI's most damaging scandals and failures. And it becomes telling when you look at what they view as the FBI's failures and scandals. And I'll list some of them here. It says the FBI, knowing that claims of collusion with Russia were false, collaborated with Democratic operatives to inject the story into the 2016 election through strategic media leaks, warrant applications, and lies to Congress. So they are citing the FBI's identification of collusion with Russia as being the type of thing that they want to, the type of, failure and scandal that the FBI needs to be purged of its ability to do. So but from our vantage point, we see accountability. We see the FBI doing its job to address a matter of national security. If they have their way, the political interest could trump the national security interest, say, in that situation. Another one of the failures they identify, they talk about the 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 conduct to chill the free speech rights of parents in response to supposed threats against school boards. Right. So you might remember those stories where school boards that were maybe friendly or accommodative to um, progressive education that were open to teaching on sexuality and anti-racism, and so on. How these started receiving threats. And the Department of Justice, the FBI in particular, uh, sort of worked to address those threats. But they're saying, you you chilled the free speech rights of people who didn't agree with that with the decisions those school boards were making. But you failed to protect the rights of Americans who were um, who were targeted at pregnancy at pregnancy care centers. Now you may know what those pregnancy care centers are. They present themselves as an alternative to abortion, and they've been known to use sort of very sort of clandestine and deceptive methods to lure women seeking abortions to these pregnancy care centers, thinking that they will gain access to an abortion, and then proceed to guilt them and use forms of psychological manipulation to try to persuade them against getting an abortion. And of course, these centers have come under a lot of criticism, scrutiny, and they've been protested against. And they're saying to the FBI, well, you failed to protect the pregnancy care centers. They accused the FBI of suppressing the scandal of Hunter Biden's laptop. And they accused the Department of Justice that they say basically that they sued multiple states regarding their efforts to enhance election integrity. What are they referring to when they speak of the efforts of states to enhance election integrity? You may recall in the both in the lead up and in the aftermath of the last presidential election, laws being passed by Republican state administrations, which made it harder for minorities, specifically Black people, to vote. And but they presented these efforts at voter suppression as saying they just want to enhance the integrity of elections. Of course, the Department of Justice took action. It sued some of these states. And this is the type of thing that they want to, this is what they're identifying as some of the failures and scandals of the Department of Justice. And they want to curtail, the department's independence in these areas or its ability to do these things. Also, in connection with the Department of Justice, they say they want to enforce US Code 1461 and 1462 against providers and distributors of abortion pills that use the mail. These are what are referred to as the Comstock laws, the Comstock Act. Comstock Act. And basically, the Comstock Act is a law that was named after the person who proposed it, Anthony Comstock. In 1873. And it's an anti-obscenity law that made it illegal to mail, to use the mail system to send, say, pornography. But it also prohibits, in the language of the law, every article, instrument, substance, drug, medicine, or thing which is advertised or described in a manner calculated to lead another to use or apply it for producing an abortion. So basically, abortion medication cannot be transported, cannot be sent to people using the mail system. That's criminal. So this law is still on the books. But what's happened is over time, it's been interpreted more and more narrowly. And then, of course, you have Roe v. Wade in 1973, which basically made the Comstock laws which basically nullified, I'll use that term, it's maybe not the correct legal term, but it basically nullified the abortion language in the Comstock Act. Right, but now with Roe v. Wade gone, right, Project 2025, they want the Department of Justice to enforce this old law, this Comstock law. Against abortion pill providers. So this is a very prominent and concerning thing. You may have read of their attempts to revive the Comstock Act in the news. But basically, what its implementation would virtually end abortions nationwide. Rather, abortions will still happen. But it will end access to safe legal abortions. Right. And another worrying concern is that the Comstock Act has a 5-year statute of limitations. Which means basically if a Republican is elected in November, they could retroactively prosecute violations against their ban on abortion pill trafficking. Um, okay. Okay, I'll take another point from the Department of Justice. And this is from page 561. They're saying they want to ensure that the Department of Justice spearheads an initiative demonstrating the federal government's commitment to non-discrimination. The department should also lead a whole-of-government recommitment to non-discrimination. And should be working with all other federal agencies to ensure that they're both complying with their constitutional and legal requirements. They say this will require particularly close coordination with several key agencies. Including such obvious candidates as the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, The Departments of Defense and Education. It lists a whole list of other departments that they'll need to cooperate with. And they also want to make sure that there's all federal contractors are adhering to their commitment to non-discrimination. Now, that sounds good in a vacuum until you look at what they understand to be non-discrimination. From their vantage point, I'm going to paraphrase, but basically they have a commitment to a colorblind society and administration. And they believe efforts that have been targeted at assisting racial minorities, women, and sexual minorities, that from the perspective of their colorblind ideal, these efforts that are benefiting just specific groups are discrimination, and they should be done away with. Right. So they want to do away with all affirmative action. And they want a robust cross-agency effort to remove all DI and affirmative action initiatives. Even contractors that the government hires will be analyzed to make sure that they have nothing to do with affirmative action or DEI. And I think you can reason how much of a setback and a disaster that would be. It's a tragic rolling back of progress that's been fought very hard for over a long period of time. And they aim to reverse it very quickly and thoroughly. Okay. Trying to see what I can round off with. Okay, I'll close off with the second section on the common defense. And I'll just go through this quickly. And over here, it covers a lot of things. But I want to speak specifically about their ideas pertaining to US aid. Because US aid is more outward looking. It's more a foreign policy oriented office. But it speaks to what they want to do, speaks to their commitment um, to, basically export their ideology and principles as far as possible. All right, so USAID was founded during the Kennedy administration to promote America's foreign policy and security and national interests. I know USAID is provides a significant amount of humanitarian aid. To to other countries, other governments. Right. And they accuse Biden of having deformed the agency by treating it as a global platform to pursue a divisive political and cultural agenda. Because USA doesn't just give uh, money to countries in need. In connection with their aid, and sometimes as a condition of receiving the aid, they encourage different things, such as adherence to human rights conventions, women's rights, promoting and respecting women's rights, uh, not persecuting people in the LGBTQ community, right? Adherence to sort of the encourage of climate-friendly policy making on the part of the people who are receiving climate-friendly policy making on the part of the people who are receiving the aid. But the Project 2025 frames it as basically that they've attached aid to their radical cultural agenda. Right, and have antagonized our allies. But this is something because you have to think who have they antagonized? Right? When you look at various African countries, right? Something that has been a point of grievance with a lot of less than democratic regimes. is the fact that America pushes human rights in connection with the aid it provides. And will cancel and withhold aid when a country decides to pass a law saying they're going to imprison gay people. And they juxtapose America's approach with that of China, who they say China's not here to lecture us about human rights. They're just here for business. Because China turns a blind eye to whatever's going on with the country that they're working with in the area of human rights. But Project 2025 says, they are antagonizing our allies. And hurting America's interests. So they're proposing two things, which is firstly to massively scale back USAID's global footprint and contributions. This is in line with Trump's sort of America First approach. Right, to sort of retreat from certain commitments, strategic commitments. And they want to do with USAID what they want to do with the Department of Justice. Which is completely remove all DEI-related language initiatives and programming. And even, remove things like it's sort of gendered aid when they provide, aid for, sorry, let me get the language here. Yes, they want to rescind Biden's gender policy. Which has informed the type of initiatives that USAID promotes in other, provides aid for. And they want to, in all agency contracts, grants, and programs, to end all to remove all programming that include the terms gender, gender equality, or gender equity. To gender diverse individuals. And remove all support for programming that supports abortion. And they also want to increase USAID's collaboration with faith-based organizations. All right, so, there's so many layers to sort of understand, how the myriad ways that this is bad. I don't have time to go through my analysis. But I guess that, honestly, that, that this is one way in which what they are proposing for America will spill over and affect other countries. Okay, so we've covered as much as we can in the time that we have. I hope what we've covered does encourage you to go and look at it. Because again, to bring it back to where we started, the speaking of a nation is the action of its legislative and judicial authorities. That's policy and law. And here we have the Sunday Law movement has laid out in policy and law what they want to do. So I think as we continue to track towards the Sunday Law, it's important that we know we know what they want to do and what it looks like. All right, so we will close there. I'll ask that we close with a word of prayer. Lord in heaven, we thank you for your word. We thank you that you've not left us without light. You desire us to understand what is coming. And Lord, may you help us today to make our calling and election sure. To be doing what we can and must. Keep walking along the path. May you bless the rest of the time we have together over this weekend. We ask it in Jesus' name. Amen.
Thank you very much, Elder Tabo. And I think to be a little flexible and to allow for a little bit longer break this time, we are, well, actually, we'll start at the top of the hour. It's fairly short breaks, I know, between, but at the same time, to keep everybody's Sabbath and their day together, and so that we don't go overtime at the other end of it too long. So top of the hour, remember we have to log back in once this Zoom has ended, and we hope that you will stand by, stay ready to take in Katya's study, the last one for today. Thank you so much, and see you again soon.